Believe it or not, there are apparently quite a few life lessons you can learn from the movie A Christmas Story. It's not just about an enjoyable holiday movie. You can actually learn a thing or two. Dr. Quentin Schultze is an orator, a professor, a consultant, and the author of the new book, You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, Life Lessons from the Movie A Christmas Story. Quentin, it's great to have you on the radio. Thanks for joining me.
Frank, listen, I'm a big fan of yours. I listen a lot. I'm a late night guy. I listen to the AM radio band, the medium wave, we call it. Here's the deal, Frank. I was friends with Gene Shepard, who wrote A Christmas Story. In fact, I taught storytelling with him back in the 80s. And as we went through his various stories, I learned what he was up to. And I had all of these notes, and I thought, man, what do I do with all these? He was such a creative storyteller, unlike anybody else that I'd ever known who was into storytelling. And I thought, this movie is never going to go anywhere. I'll never write a book about it. And every year, the movie gets more popular, as you said. And get this, I just saw the data that suggests that the number of American adults who will see A Christmas Story, Fragile, and all the rest coming up this season is about equal to the number who will attend church on Christmas.
I am not surprised by that, but that is pretty impressive. Now, I know that you invited Shep to co-teach, basically, at your storytelling college class. Were you a fan of Gene Shepard first, or were you a fan of the film A Christmas Story first?
Oh, of Gene, way back. We shared a hobby, ham radio, and also I listened to him on WOR radio in New York when he was on there. That was great fun. So, yeah, I was a fan of his for a long, long time. I was looking for somebody who might be the best storyteller in the United States that I could learn storytelling from and share with my students along the way. Storytelling is not an easy thing. Everybody says, oh, yeah, you tell a story, it's no big deal. But listen, to do it really well, like he did it, you have to learn certain techniques. And he had those suckers down. Boy, he was a good storyteller. So when he wrote the script for A Christmas Story, sorry to interrupt you, Frank, but when he wrote that script, he had the idea of taking multiple stories. These are all stories that appeared previously in other places, including Playboy magazine, and to put these together in a way where he could really be like a philosopher of life. All of these life lessons that he put in there. We identified 24 of them together when we were teaching, and then in the book, I talk about 20 of those, including relative to the leg lamp, which, you know, is the greatest icon from the movie.
Right, exactly.
And so it was absolutely a ball to get to know him and learn how to do this.
So how long did you guys have this collaborative teaching situation for?
Yeah, from about the mid-'80s until the mid-'90s. He died in 99. His wife died in 98. She was still alive the last time we taught the course. I think must have been about 96. And along the way, I talked with him about a lot of things, about other comedians. Jerry Seinfeld, by the way, says that he learned his entire comedic sensibility from Gene Shepard.
Wow. What was it that made Shep such an effective communicator?
What he learned to do was to come up with something in observation, everyday observation, something that people took for granted, walking to and from school, for instance, which is really important in the movie, or confronting a bully. There's another one, there's Scud Farkas. As I say in the book, he got that name, Scud Farkas, from the Scud Soviet missile system, the Russian missile system, because he believed that authoritarian leaders are bullies. So he would come up with something, memories in his own life about bullies, and then he would say, what's the deal with bullies? They're basically authoritarian people, and you got to beware of them. They're tough to beat. You can always try to run if you want, but you got to beware. You got to avoid them, avoid bullies. And so that's what he was trying to teach in the movie about bullies. So then he had a theme always with each story, a life lesson that he was trying to get across. The big one in A Christmas Story is to pursue your dreams. And so Ralphie is set up in the very beginning. You see him looking in the store window. He wants that Red Ryder 200-shot air model, range model rifle, with the compass and this thing in the stock that tells time. He wants that sucker, and he wants it so bad. And Gene believed that human beings pick up on things, and they got obsessive about things, and particularly men. Now we're getting a little more deeply into Shepard's view of reality here. He thought men chase things. They chase women, but then they chase substitutes for women, which is what the leg lamp becomes, a trophy wife at a point. And so women have to control men, keep them under control, and fix things. Men are irrational, and they're uncontrollably romantic toward things that they want. Cars is another thing. He said to me he was a big car fan. He wrote for Car and Driver magazine. So he's got the old man wants to win the award. That's his dream in life, and Ralphie wants the rifle. And so they both are these guys obsessed with pursuing their dream. They're substitutes for women, if I can put it that way. That's the way Gene looked at it.
I want to focus on some of the other lessons you get into in the book, but since you have spent so much time teaching and studying communications and storytelling specifically, what tips can you give us or anybody listening that wants to improve their own storytelling methodology about how to use some of the Schultze-Shep, methodology in terms of improving their own styles?
Yeah, that's a great question, Frank. You're wonderful. And that's exactly the way Gene would put it. He'd say to me over a cup of coffee, he loved coffee. He said, "Hey, Quinn, listen, here's the deal, guy. You got to teach these kids how to tell stories, because everything they do in life, if they can tell a story, they're going to do it better. They're going to be more effective." And then I would say, Gene, give me an example. What are you talking about? He'd say, "Oh, look at man, they're going to go out for resumes. What do you do when you take your resume, you go out, you get interviewed? What do you do?" I said, "Well, okay, yeah, you answer questions." He said, No, you got it wrong. The resume is your script. It's your agenda. You go in there with that resume, and you have memorized stories to tell, to talk about how great you are, whatever you did, with every item on the resume. But you got to do it fast, like a comedian. So you go in there, and anything they ask you on that resume that you created the agenda, Quinn. Hey, come on now, guy. You'd say, and then you'd say, you teach the students how to do that. And okay, Gene, I'll do that. How do I tell them to teach a story about items on their resume? He said, well, everyone is what happened. Who are the characters? Where did it happen? And then, most importantly for Gene, what did they learn about it? Because that what they learned about it, their skills, their knowledge, their traits or whatever, that's it. So that's the way Gene thought. Every story was based on a life experience, and we all have everyday life experiences you do with your young kid. I can't remember if you have a daughter or a son. And so you go along in life, and you remember these things that happen, and you say, okay, now, can I embellish it? You always embellish, you exaggerate a little bit, you bend it so that it's really a good story. Did I tell you what happened the other day, Frank? My wife and I are big birders, and so we're out birding in one of our favorite places. And she says, "Look at that thing up in the tree." She said, "Man, that is fairly rare. Take a look at that." I don't know what it is, and I'm there with my binoculars straining away, and she's straining away, and then she's laughing hilariously. I'm saying, "What's going on, dear?" She said, "Hey, there's a bird on your head." I said, "What?" So she's spotting a bird on my head while I'm trying to spot another bird. Now, what Gene would do was take that story that just recently happened and say, what's the life lesson in that? That often the thing that we're really looking for is much closer to us than what we thought, but we didn't see it.
Why did Gene Shepard leave radio when he did?
Gene Shepard had a very big ego and very low self-esteem. And this is true of a lot of major comedians. You've probably seen that with some that you've known. He called himself a humorist rather than a comedian. But in any case, he always had to go to the next big medium where he could deal with his low self-esteem and prove to people that he was better than what he had already done in the previous medium. So he starts out on the radio and doing some stage work and so on. And then he meets Shel Silverstein at the Playboy Mansion in Chicago, of all places. And Shelley says to him, hey, you got to start writing these things up. And Gene says, I don't know how to write up my stories. I tell them orally, and I'm really good at that. And Shelley says, well, I'll work with you. And then about 26, if I remember right, of Gene's stories first appeared in Playboy magazine, and then continued to do radio. But then he started to have some opportunities to get involved in films. And films, of course, we're seeing in the entertainment industry as sort of the top end, things you really want to shoot for. There's more money to be made. But he started out with films that were low paying with public television, working with WGBH out of Boston. And but that's where he really learned how to take multiple stories and put them together in one script. In fact, his first film was called Phantom of the Open Hearth, and it really was spectacular. I remember seeing it when it came out on PBS. I'm guessing it was about 76 or so.
You know, Quentin, let me ask you to pause that thought, and I have to take a quick break, but stick around because I have a lot of other questions for you, and I want to get into some of the lessons that people can actually learn in A Christmas Story and benefit from. This is The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is Quentin Schultze. He's the author of You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, Life Lessons from the Movie A Christmas Story. We'll continue straight ahead. We're talking about A Christmas Story, one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time, and the brainchild of the one and only Gene Shepard, who you can obviously hear as the voice throughout the film. And with Quentin Schultze, his book is You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, Life Lessons from the Movie A Christmas Story. Quentin, one of the lessons that you itemize in your book is be flexible. How does the movie teach us to be flexible?
Yeah. Oh, boy, what a great one. So Gene believes that we should pursue our dreams. We have plans in life, but then they don't go the way we wanted, and we have to switch gears. And he really wanted to get that across. And what happens with the Bumpus hounds coming into the house, stealing the turkey, leaving the old man standing there with just a wing left. It's really devastating. But the old man quickly sizes up the situation. He says, all right, everybody, go upstairs and get dressed. We're going out to eat. And, of course, they go out to the Chinese restaurant. And they have one of the great Christmas experiences of their life at the Chinese restaurant, eating the duck. And, by the way, the duck that comes out with the head on, Melinda Dillon, who plays Mom, was not told what was going to happen. So the waiter brings the duck over and puts it down, and then the old man motions. Darren McGavin's looking at this. What is this? It's this head on. We don't want this head on. And finally, the waiter proprietor of the place realizes that they don't want that head on there. So he grabs the cleaver and kabam, he takes that thing right off. Well, they didn't tell Melinda Dillon and the kids. So they go berserk. And if you get a sense of it, her laughter there is really, truly laughter. So the old man is flexible. He changes gears when he has to. And that's the way we should all be in life. By the way, the interesting thing here is that when I taught storytelling with Gene across all of his stories, not just what's in A Christmas Story, we identified 24 life lessons, like be flexible. And then we said, okay, how many of these are actually in the movie? And we came up with the 20. And so I wrote the book, 20 short chapters. Each one is a life lesson as Gene Shepard saw it from the movie. And so these parables, which is what Gene called them too, the parables, the stories in the movie, they really work on two levels. And when you realize them, the movie is even more enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching it as I've gone through the chapters in your book. What about this one? This is an interesting one, and I think will resonate with a lot of our audience. Don't trust the media. What does A Christmas Story tell us about not trusting the media?
Yeah, so Gene believed that you couldn't trust the media long before there was so-called fake news and people were skeptical of media to the level that they are now. And, of course, he was in the media. He knew a lot of people. He was on some of the committees for the various guilds in Hollywood, and he would tell me stories about the people there. And he said, you can't trust these people. Whatever they say in public, their interviews, the work they do, they may create a movie or a TV show, and they don't even like it or believe it and never watch it. And news he was so critical of the news. And so in the movie, to get at that, he does it a number of ways. One is with what's going on with the newspaper and the contest, where it's a contest about great figures in American literature, and he's at the kitchen table trying to get the right answer. You know, who's this great character? And Mom has the answer. It's a Lone Ranger's nephew's horse named Victor, which of course is the stupidest question that has to do with great figures in American literature. So, and it's probably a raffle, not a contest anyway, so it's a con job. But the big thing is what happens with Ralphie. He wants to get that decoder ring for Little Orphan Annie. He wants to be in the club. He checks his mailbox every day. Oh, he's into it. He's into it. He listens to it on their floor stand radio. And then he gets that decoder. He goes to the bathroom, the only place in the house where you could get privacy for a kid. And he's decoding that first message, and he's going through it. And, drink, be sure to drink your Ovaltine, he says. And I won't say it exactly the way he says it there as a kid, even though it's PG-rated movie, but he says S-O-B, And so this is what Gene was getting at there, is the first time that this adolescent kid realizes that the media are not the way they are.
He was duped.
He was duped.
My guest is Dr. Quentin Schultze. He's the author of the book, You'll Shoot Your Eye Out. I definitely recommend it. It's a short book. You can read it in a day and watch 2 or 3 showings of A Christmas Story that same day. Quentin, remind us, if you would, how much of a hit was this film when it came out? Was it one of those films that became bigger later on?
Yeah, it's a great question, Frank. So what happened is the movie bombed at the box office in 1983. It came out right around Thanksgiving. I went to see it right away, as a few people did. And then by Christmas, the studios had largely pulled it. Now, I should say that the studio did not necessarily want to make the film, but the director was Bob Clark. He had made Porky's, which made a lot of money, and they wanted him to do another similar film that would make a lot of money. They were even thinking about having him do a horror film. And the deal that he cut, because he really wanted to make this film, was on a low budget to let him do it. So he had a very low budget. They had 2 shooting locations, one in the Cleveland area where the house from A Christmas Story is located now, and then the other up near Toronto. So at any rate, they make this low budget film. It comes out. It doesn't do well. Then a few years later, the video cassette becomes a consumer commodity. And these video rental shops that are popping up, Blockbuster and the others, started looking for films that they could put into one of 2 categories that were among the most popular in their stores. One was the seasonal one, and of course at Christmas they would put stuff in the Christmas category, and then the other one was for family-oriented. Well, this was PG. At the time, there was no PG-13 rating when the film came out, and they didn't want to go to an R, so they kept it at PG. So this thing started showing up in the video cassette shops, and people started seeing it there and renting it and telling friends about it. And it gradually, Frank, over time, picked up steam, every year becoming more popular. More rentals, more purchases of VCR video cassettes, and then eventually with DVDs. This is going to stun you, Frank, and your listeners, but last year, 2023, Warner Brothers sold 9 million DVDs of A Christmas Story.
Wow, my goodness. And that's even more amazing considering the decline in DVD usage over the last few years. Was, given the fact that it did very well in video sales and then later on in television, was Shep able to essentially retire on the royalties from A Christmas Story?
Just barely. He died in 1999. He had royalties from a number of things. Actually, he got a lot of royalties, and his estate still does, from his books. If you look at his books on Amazon, especially In God We Trust.
All others pay cash.
Cash, yeah, great. And that probably kind of sums up his overall worldview, by the way. Don't trust human beings, trust God. So he lived in Sanibel Island. He had 2 different homes, one in Maine, one in Sanibel, and he kept the one in Sanibel. When his wife died in 98, he started going downhill pretty badly and then passed away. It was not a huge estate, but it was a comfortable estate with a very steady income from a whole source of royalties. and so he did well. You know, they did a sequel film a couple years ago, and actually, of the kids and all grown up, the guy who played Ralphie, Peter Billingsley, was real involved in developing that. And then they also have a stage version of A Christmas Story that travels around the country, or you can perform it in local theaters. And the royalties on that are pretty good. He was not extremely rich, but he was comfortable.
Got it. Well, this is a terrific book. I hope people check it out. It's called You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, Life Lessons from the Movie A Christmas Story. We've been talking with its author, Quentin Schultze. Quentin, I really enjoyed this talk. Let's chat again.
Likewise, buddy. Thank you. And I love your show.
Thank you. Spread the word. Appreciate that very, very much.
Okay, buddy.
Thank you. Quentin Schultze. All right.